This will sound very strange, but the most serious act of terrorism in Israel in years that occurred on January 27, 2023, when an Arab Muslim killed 7 people and injured 3 people in a mass shooting. And this in addition to thousands of Jews visiting Joseph's tomb for the first time in over a year since the tomb had been vandalized, are prophecies from God that is predicting that Israel will bomb Iran's nuclear energy and weapons facilities on October 9th, 2023. And then Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on October 26th, 2023. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. The analysis in this video explains how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections pointed to the date September 4th, 2023, and this video explains why it was believed that September 4th would be the predicted date that Israel would nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria, and fulfill the prophecy in the 17th chapter of the book of Isaiah in the Bible. Since the time of the original production of this video, God's signs have revealed more knowledge, and instead of nuking Damascus, Syria on September 4th, it is now predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria on October 26th, 2023, and fulfill Isaiah chapter 17 days after it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran on October 9th. September 4th ended up being a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the predicted date that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria. September 4th was the day of the prophetic Burning Man sign, the amazing details of which are explained in the must-watch Burning Man prophecy video. Every year at the end of the Burning Man festival, 70,000 quote-unquote burners leave en masse in what is called the Exodus. This year, the Exodus was a muddy disaster when the Playa Desert sand turned to mud due to unprecedented rain. The quote-unquote burners were trapped for days before they were finally allowed to begin the Exodus at 14 o'clock local time on September 4th, 1400 military time. The reason the Exodus began at 14 o'clock was because the disastrous Burning Man Exodus is symbolism for an evacuation, and it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant and cause an evacuation in southwest Iran on October 9th, 14 days after it is predicted that a dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will be detonated in Manhattan, New York City, and cause an evacuation of Manhattan Island on September 25th. More is explained in the Burning Man video, but this is also why DJ Diplo and Chris Rock were part of this Burning Man news story, and why the video of them leaving Burning Man in the back of a pickup truck went viral. They left Burning Man with Austin Butler, who played Elvis in the recent Elvis movie, and also on September 4th was the world premiere of the new movie about Elvis's relationship with 14-year-old Priscilla. Also, the predicted evacuation in southwest Iran on October 9th will be 35 days after the prophetic Exodus evacuation from Burning Man on September 4th, and the nation of Persia was renamed Iran in 1935. And the 35th chapter of the book of Isaiah in the Bible is a prophecy about the parched land of the desert becoming a pool of water, and about a road that God's ransomed will travel on called Highway of Holiness. The burners in their exodus out of the parched land that had been turned to pools of water traveled down what is called Gate Road. And in the Bible, judgment on a people symbolically begins at the gate. The prophetic Burning Man exodus on September 4th, that was the result of sand turning to mud, was 9 days after Bob Barker died at the age of 99 on August 26th. And Barker is famous for his fight scene in a movie with Jewish comedian Adam Sandler, in which Sandler is thrown into water and is soaking wet, which hints at the sand turning to mud at Burning Man 9 days after Sandler's tribute tweet to Barker on the day he died at the age of 99. Barker rhymes with Bashur, and the fight between Barker and the Jewish comedian hints at the fight between the Jewish nation Israel and Iran when Israel will bomb Iran's Bashur nuclear power plant. Barker hosted the TV game show The Price is Right for a record 35 years, and Persia was renamed Iran in 1935. The name Bob Barker in English gematria is equal to 444, and on the day that the host of The Price is Right died, news broke that the U.S. Marines are buying, for the right price, 44 of Israel's Iron Dome launchers. This was on August 26th, which is 44 days before it is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran's Bashur nuclear power plant on October 9th, which will be 17 days before it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria on October 26th and fulfill Isaiah chapter 17. In Hebrew gematria, Damascus, Syria is 999. And in the Bible, the number 9 is symbolic of God's judgment. And in the Bible, the city of Damascus is symbolic of the world. God will judge the world that will be led by the Antichrist after it attempts to destroy Israel and make Jerusalem an international city. It is predicted that there will be an evacuation in southwest Iran 14 days after it is predicted that there will be an evacuation in New York City on September 25th. September 25th will be exactly 9 years, which symbolizes judgment, after the birth of the second of 2 prophetic cows, born with the number 7 on its forehead. These cows pointed to the king of Egypt's dream in the Bible about 14 cows. In the dream, the 14 cows are separated into 2 sets of 7 cows, and the latter 7 cows are symbolic of the end times period of 7 years of the Antichrist. In Bible prophecy, it is said that this symbolic 7 years of the Antichrist begins after 69 sets of 7 years. This is why at the same time that the 7 cow was born on September 25th, 2014, the Antichrist spoke at the opening of the 69th UN General Assembly in New York City, which is exactly 9 years, which symbolizes judgment, before it is predicted that a dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will explode in New York City, which will lead to an evacuation of New York City, and this will be 14 days before it is predicted that there will be an evacuation in southwest Iran after it is bombed by Israel. These 14 days in between these 2 evacuations are hinted at with this connection to the 14 cows. It is predicted that Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on September 4th, 2023. This will be exactly 110 days after thousands of Jews visited Joseph's tomb in the West Bank for the first time in over a year since the tomb had been vandalized in a Palestinian riot. Joseph died at the age of 110. And this is why it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus 110 days later. And Joseph's tomb is in the northern West Bank, and Damascus lies on the other side of the Syrian border, the other side of the northern Israeli border. This sign, the Joseph's tomb sign, is explained much more in other videos. But this gets us to this particular video, which is this 110 days connection prior to May 17th, 2023, the date that the thousands of Jews visited Joseph's tomb, which, by the way, as explained in the other videos, is a rare event in itself, because it requires the escort of the IDF forces. And again, it was the first time since the other prophetic sign, which was the destruction, vandalism of the tomb on April 9th, 2022, which also is explained in other videos. But Joseph died at the age of 110. Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria, 110 days after the Jews visited Joseph's tomb. But 110 days before Joseph's tomb was vandalized was January 27th, 2023. And on this date was the most serious act of terrorism in many years. A terrorist killed 7 people and injured 3 people in a shooting. This mass shooting was by a 21-year-old Palestinian. The 7 killed, 7 souls, and 3 injured hints at 3 sets of 7. Joshua also died at the age of 110, Joshua in the Bible. And Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho in a symbolic 3 sets of 7. They marched around the walls once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched 7 times while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. And then the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. And that's why in this prophetic sign, because it's a 110 days connection and then another 110 days connection to the date it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria, Joseph and Joshua both died at the age of 110. And the reason for that, by the way, is because the number 110 symbolizes Jesus. Joshua led the Hebrews into the promised land on the 10th day of the first month, which is what 110 hints at. Jesus, in his first coming, in his triumphal entry, when he officially arrived into Jerusalem, fulfilling the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, when he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, that was also the 10th day of the first month. And that's why the number 110 hints at that as well, and that's why Joshua died at the age of 110. It's also, by the way, why there was 110 stories in the Twin Towers. There were 2 towers, which gives us 2 times 110 for 220. And in between this mass shooting of 7 killed and 3 injured, which is 3 sets of 7, it is 220 days to September 4th, the date it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria. The shooter was also 21 years old, and that is another 3 sets of 7, which gives us a second witness to the 7 killed, 3 injured, 3 sets of 7. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and it is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. When Israel will nuke and destroy Damascus, Syria, it will fulfill the prophecy in the 17th chapter of the book of Isaiah, which describes the immediate, sudden, overnight destruction of the city, which can only be really plausible due to a nuclear bomb. The killer was avenging the death of a distant 17-year-old relative that was killed by the IDF the day before. The 17-year-old was believed to be carrying a weapon, but it turned out to be fake. This hints at the 17-year-old that was arrested at the Damascus Gate, which is another prophetic sign explained in another video. That occurred on January 26th, 2019. This is because the reason for the 17-year-old's arrest, because he was carrying a weapon, a big knife, at the Damascus Gate, is because Damascus, the destruction of it, will fulfill Isaiah chapter 17. And this is the reason why this shooter was avenging the death of a 17-year-old that was carrying a weapon and killed by the IDF the day before. This shooting was the day after 9 Palestinians were killed in Jenin, in the West Bank, which is why the 110 days connection from this shooting to the visit of Joseph's tomb in the West Bank. And one of the ways in which God provides second witnesses, as I explained is required, is through pairing certain numbers together. And he frequently pairs the numbers 9 and 17 together, and the numbers 9 and 110 together. And so 9 Palestinians were killed the day before. The killer killed 7 Jews and injured 3. And that's a pairing of, and the killer was 17 years old, which is a significant part of the story because he's only a teenager. And so that's a pairing of 9 and 17, because one of the 9 Palestinians was his distant relative that he was avenging the death of. So this is a pairing of 9 and 17. One reason why God pairs the numbers 9 and 17 together, well, first of all, in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. 9 and 17 are paired together because the Antichrist, who will lead the world, the United Nations, some global effort to make Jerusalem an international city, and this Antichrist will be heading that effort. And this is the biggest transgression against God that the world will collectively do in the end times. And so anyway, the Antichrist was president from 2009 until 2017. And that's one reason why God pairs 9 and 17 together. God also pairs 9 and 110 together frequently because it points to 9/11, and it also symbolizes the judgment of Jesus, because again 110 is the number of Joshua and Joseph, who were types, what's called a type, a foreshadow, symbolism for Jesus. And the judgment warning on 9/11 is what's pointed at with pairings of 9 and 110. The 110 stories collapsed and engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall. Federal Hall is where George Washington was first inaugurated at the founding of the nation, and so the founding of Federal Hall being cracked is symbolism for the founding of the nation being cracked, which is the founding of the nation is in God and Jesus Christ. After his inauguration, Washington walked down Wall Street, and so we have 110, which is the age of Joshua in the Bible, and Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security, and the walls of security of America temporarily collapsed on that day. It was a collapse of security, and that's why Washington marched down Wall Street. It was a parallel with the march of the Jews around Jericho. He marched down Wall Street from Trinity Chapel and from Federal Hall and into Trinity Chapel, where he then consecrated the nation to God right after he became president, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings. And that's why Trinity Chapel is known today as the Miracle Chapel, because it was the only building at Ground Zero that survived the falling debris on 9/11. And it did so without even a broken window, because God was pointing to this chapel and Washington's consecration of the nation to God. Wall Street is named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. And so that wall of security that Washington walked along Wall Street was from Federal Hall, and Federal Hall connects with the 110 stories that collapsed and cracked the foundation of Federal Hall. So there's your pairing of 9 and 110 in the 9/11 events. Another pairing of 9 and 110 in the 9/11 events was President Trump, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs. Before the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho collapsed, the Hebrews blew trumpets, and then the walls of security collapsed. This is why Trump's presidency and his election campaign were synonymous with his border wall of security. And Trump, on 9/11, called into local news channel 9. He called into Channel 9 News and talked about the events of 9/11 and mentioned that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. And in the Bible, towers are symbolic of God's judgment. In fact, the collapse of the towers were pointing to the Tower of Babel, the World Trade Center. You know, the Tower of Babel started. But I don't want to go off onto too more of a tangent here. So that's why we have a connection from the 9 Palestinians killed 110 days and then another 110 days to the date it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria, north of the West Bank. And the Palestinians were killed in Jenin in the West Bank, where Joseph's tomb is. So it all connects through Joseph's tomb. And Joseph's bones were carried with the Hebrews into the Promised Land after Joseph died at 110 in Egypt before the Exodus. Okay, so there you have this amazing connection. This is how the terrorism event of the shooting was a prophetic sign that revealed the day that Israel will nuke Damascus, Syria. Now, this occurred, the shooting, on January 27th. It occurred on Holocaust Memorial Day. I'll say that again. It occurred on Holocaust Memorial Day. And this coincidence was not intended by the shooter, because the shooting was in response to the killing in Jenin the day before. The incident in Jenin the day before. And so this coincidence was designed by God. This prophetic sign, this terrorism in Israel prophetic sign, that was a 3 sets of 7, occurred on Holocaust Memorial Day. God is pointing to the restoration of Israel and Jacob's hour of trial, or Jacob's hour of trouble, as it's described in Bible prophecy, that will begin with this upcoming war that will be triggered by Israel bombing Iran and then nuking Damascus, Syria. It's amazing that this occurred on the Holocaust Memorial Day. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.